Hello, this is Dr. Mike, and this is the first lecture for week one of Ethics 205. And I wanted to take just a few moments to talk to you about this very interesting course that may be very different from what you are accustomed to in your own field of study. I mean, you're a vet tech, you are studying to be a nurse, you're studying to be any other number of people, cybersecurity or whatever. Ethics is a course that is almost as old as civilization. And when I say that about civilization, I mean when men started to live together in groups and began to think about how different they were from the animal world and what set them apart. Much of that had to do with how we think about things and our ability to reason and our ability to live with some kind of ethical values that allow us to live together. When men were hunters and gatherers before they began to live together in civilized manners, it didn't take a lot. You had 10 or 15 family members that hunted and gathered and moved about from place to place. When civilization started and people decided it was easier to live together and function as a larger unit, it didn't take everybody to go out, of course, and to gather food all day or all week and to live. But you also now had people that had free time, that had gifts and things that they could contribute in the way of arts and teaching and all these other things. All these kind of evolved out of what we would call more of a civilized lifestyle, a sedentary lifestyle, if you will, where you're not roaming around, but you're staying put. And so beginning with the Greeks, which would predate Christianity and all those things about several thousand years, the Greeks and the Romans began to come up began thinking about and having philosophers who thought about things like ethics and philosophy and how we learn, how we think. And so these are very old fields. Now, in the fall of Rome in 476 AD, the West suddenly kind of went dark, and we lost all of our literacy within 200 years. We stopped reading, stopped writing, except for just a very few people. Even priests didn't read until 800, when Charlemagne began what was called the Carolinian Revival and began to require priests to read. But by 1200, we're kind of back on point again, ready to move forward. And we had to go back, and believe it or not, you may find this interesting, all those things that we had learned with the Greeks and the Romans and that are important to our Western civilization had been taken by the Muslim world and translated into Arabic and preserved. So we owe them a great debt of gratitude. You may not, from present realities, realize that the Arab world was the go-to people for wisdom and for teaching and for science and all these things all through the Dark Ages. And from what we see of much of the Arab world today, they turned and went back into the Dark Ages after World War I and many began, not everybody. I'm not going to broad brush everyone. Everyone in the Muslim world are not terrorists, and they're not anti-American, and they don't fight against us. There's some wonderful Muslim people in the world who just want to have a life and raise their children and pay their bills. And so we can't judge everyone by just one or two that don't go that way. But at any rate, we owe them a great debt of gratitude, and that we're able to go back and to retrieve our teachings from the philosophers of Greece and Rome, and to build back something of what we had before the Dark Ages. And so it's a kind of a clawing our way back, if you will, until we get to the Enlightenment, and then changed how people think and how they look at things. So let me pull up slides just a moment, and we'll share with you some basic things about our class that we're going to be doing, or we're going to be thinking about. And you realize that I'm not able to share everything in a 20-minute lecture that we need to talk about. So it's incumbent upon you to read and to study and to digest and to analyze the things that are going on in this class. This kind of whets your appetite, maybe answer some questions you might have, might set the stage for you for further reading and further study. So the question is, why do we study ethics, or what is ethics? Ethics are basically our understanding of what is right and what is wrong, and that will change. That will differ from society to society, from time to time. We have come to look at this from a different standpoint, I guess, in this day than in the past. But there are things that change. These kind of things do change over time. Some of them do. Some of them are considered to be stationary, not changing. But these matters are not always easy to judge from our standpoint. Ethics is a set of values or principles that are held by individuals or groups. And I hate to say this, but in this class, even as small as it is, we have different ethics and we have different values and different principles. We don't all see eye to eye on any one subject, and that's fine. But we realize that we have to have a rule of law. So there has to be a certain set of principles that are unyielding. And we normally look back at those as being like the Ten Commandments or the laws of Hammurabi or the 12 tables that came to us from the Romans. Those were considered to be the principal things that in order for us to live together as civilized people, that we have to uphold. So everybody should have those same principles. Thou shalt not lie. You shouldn't kill. You shouldn't steal. You shouldn't bear false witness. And so you will see many times in our courtrooms or in the courthouses where we meet to pass judgment upon people that have done wrong or broken the moral laws, you'll see a set of the Ten Commandments posted there somewhere as an indicator that these are the absolutes, that there are some absolute truths that cannot be dickered with or debated on. And we're going to talk about a lot of those as we go forward, the things today that we have that we are not agreed upon. One of those would be abortion. One would be capital punishment, if you would. Not everybody is in line with taking someone's life for what they do. So basically, we'll talk about those kind of ethics. But this is a study of different sets of values that people might have. In philosophy, ethics would be considered to be a moral philosophy, and philosophical questions can be asked about a lot of different subjects. I mean, aesthetics, for instance, is the philosophy of the study of art. We can go in and look at art. We can ask questions about that art. What does that teach us? What does it tell us about the culture or the times or the people that live there? My favorite story of that would be the 12th, 13th century Renaissance art, in which when you look at that, you look at children in that picture, you will see a child's body, but on that child, you'll see an adult head. It's rather startling if you don't realize it, but it was a reflection of what that culture viewed to be true, that when a child could walk or talk, then he was an adult and could go to work. And so basically it was a reflection of the moral thinking and the guidelines of those people. There was no such thing as childhood. That didn't come about until the 1500s with Martin Luther, when during the Protestant Reformation, he said, you need to learn to read the Bible for yourself. And folks that were already well on in years thought, well, maybe we could just let our children learn to read and they could read the Bible to us. And so the idea, the concept of the artificial setup of childhood until, at some point they're able to go to work was set up. Surprisingly enough, teenagers are an artificial construct. That didn't happen until the mid 1950s. There was no such concept of a teenager who was a smart aleck and smart off to his parents and, he went off and did his own thing. He didn't do that until James Dean's movie, The Rebel, introduced that to the American populace. And it became very popular. So now we have this construct called teenager that we talk about. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. We study today why we think the way we do, or why we think about thinking. Those are the things. Normative ethics considers what is good, right, and just. And so we have to think about that. In order for our society to survive, we have set up a set of laws and a court system with checks and balances in order to ensure that what is good, right, and just may prevail. May not always prevail, but it should. So ethical evaluation is just one form of evaluation, that which is normal, judgments, statements, claims, descriptive statements, difference between two things. So we use a lot of ethical terms to define that: right and wrong, good and bad, obligatory and permissible, what you ought to do, what you ought not to do. And so That's well worth thinking about as we go into this course. So there are a lot of reasons. You know, reason giving is essential when you talk about philosophical ethics. Moral judgments don't have to rely on reason. I mean, emotion can play a lot into moral judgments. You can, a lot of people say, well, I feel like capital punishment's wrong. And they may not have anything tangible that they could put their hands on, but it does play an important role. How you feel about something may have an effect upon whether it is ethical or unethical. There's a lot of pieces of this: intuition, emotion, being objective, being subjective. These are all parts of that consideration of ethical reasoning and arguing. If you've ever been on a debating team, you will understand probably more of these terms than others. The systematic exposition of a particular view about what is the nature and basis of good and evil. A relationship between ethical theory, ethical principles, ethical judgments. This is kind of a ladder structure. And so every one of us, you'll be asked during this week to come up with your own ethical standards. And I think that's well within the bailiwick of what you need to think about. What are the non-essentials in your life that you hold to? Not be a hypocrite. You don't hold to them with your mouth and do something else with your body. But what are the non-essentials? When you narrow it down, do you believe that it's ever right for to do wrong to do right? Murder, is it ever right to steal? Is it ever right to kill? What are your bases, and where do you found those judgments? A lot of people will base those judgments on their religious beliefs and feelings. Thomas Jefferson actually said that was the only real purpose for religion, was to provide a groundwork of moral basis for people to live their lives. And he was a deist. He did not believe in Christianity or the God of Christianity at all, but he believed that religion provides us with some kind of moral list of right and wrongs that helps to keep society in check. And you might be like that. I mean, you might be an atheist, you might be an agnostic, you choose not to believe in God, or you believe in a God that's disconnected from the society we live in. That is still a religion, by the way. But your religion is something a little less than, being a Muslim or being a Christian or being a Jew. So as you read through and think about these materials this week, be sure that you spend some time looking at the terms, reading the text. And even though you can't maybe digest everything, this is a pretty heavy read, you're better off for it having worked through you. I was reminded years ago of an old pastor who went out to the farm to visit one of his parishioners, and they were digging potatoes. It was muddy, it had been raining, the field was muddy and wet. The pastor had on this white suit, white shoes, came out in the middle of the muddy field, and the member wanted to say something, intelligent. He said, "Pastor," he said, "I have to tell you," he said, "I just don't understand the Bible. I don't grasp it." Farmer thought for a minute. He said, "I'll tell you what, brother." He said, "You take that," they had an old basket sitting there on the farm, we'd call it a hamper basket. It had holes in it for digging potatoes. And he said, "You take that basket down to the creek and fill it up full of water and bring it back up to me." The farmer looked at him and said, "But Pastor, that won't hold water." He said, "Just do what I ask you." And so the farmer, finally shaking his head, went down the creek, filled the basket up full of water, and sure enough, by the time he got back to where the pastor stood, all the water ran out the holes. The pastor said, "Now go do that again." And again he did it. Third time he did it. Third time he comes up, sits the basket down, and he said, "See, Pastor, I told you that basket won't hold water." He said, "Yeah, but look at the basket. The basket won't hold water, but it's cleaner for the water having run through it." And the point was that, you may not understand everything about the Bible, or in this case, ethics, but you are a different person for it having run through you. You've been exposed to it. You will hear things as you go through life on this ethics course, say, "Oh, that's what that was talking about," or "That's what that meant." And you will gain, as you get older, you'll gain a greater and greater appreciation for this class and how we think and how our moral values are. As you go into the business world, you're going to see quite a change in how things operate. People will work differently, act differently, do differently, and sometimes you'll wonder what the point is with that. But I think you will understand as we look at this that everybody's different, and you've got to learn to come to terms and to accept things you can accept. I mean, you don't have to like it, you don't have to like them. Nobody says anything about having to like someone, but you do have to get along with them and you have to work with them. And so it's good for us to understand that there are a lot of people with different kind of ethical values in their life, and that those ethical values are greatly important. Okay, thank you for this time, and we'll look forward to a couple more lectures as we go through the course. Thank you.